The courtroom was silent in a way that felt unnatural. Not the respectful silence of order, but the heavy, uncomfortable quiet that comes just before history changes direction. A federal judge leaned forward, removed his glasses, and looked directly at the attorneys seated before him. The words that followed would ripple through newsrooms, courtrooms, and political circles across the world. This court will now consider whether the media crossed a legal line, or whether the plaintiff is attempting to redraw the boundaries of free speech itself. At stake was not just money, not just reputation, but the future relationship between powerful public figures and the institutions that report on them. What went wrong between Donald J. Trump and one of the world's most respected broadcasters? Who altered the truth, if anyone did? And how did a single editorial decision turn into a $10 billion courtroom battle? To understand this case, we must go back long before the lawsuit, before the headlines, before the silence in that courtroom. Donald Trump's daily routine, even years after leaving the White House, remained rigid and controlled. Early mornings filled with briefings, television news playing constantly in the background, phones ringing with advisors, lawyers, political allies. For Trump, media was never background noise. It was battlefield intelligence. To supporters, he was resilient, combative, misunderstood. To critics, he was reckless, divisive, dangerous. But regardless of opinion, one truth remained. Donald Trump's public image was inseparable from media coverage. Across the Atlantic, inside a glass and steel BBC newsroom, a very different routine played out. Editors arrived before sunrise. Producers reviewed overnight footage. Journalists debated language, framing, accuracy. For decades, the BBC had built its reputation on restraint, measured tone, careful sourcing, editorial standards drilled into every employee. Among them was a senior documentary editor, quiet, analytical, obsessed with context. The kind of professional who believed the worst mistake a journalist could make was oversimplification. None of them believed they were stepping into legal history. At the center of the dispute was a broadcast segment examining January 6th, years after the event. It was part of a larger retrospective series analyzing global democratic stress points. The footage used was real. The words spoken were real. But what mattered, and what would later define the case, was what was left out. At the time of broadcast, life continued normally for most viewers. People watched. They argued online. They moved on. But inside Trump's legal circle, something felt different. Advisors noticed repetition. The same clip, the same phrasing, the same shortened segment of a speech aired across international platforms. One junior legal researcher, young, methodical, unnoticed, began compiling side-by-side comparisons. Full speech transcripts versus broadcast excerpts. Unedited footage versus final edits. At first, it seemed insignificant. Then patterns emerged. The edits consistently removed surrounding context. Not falsified, but narrowed. Emotionally sharpened. What many dismissed as editorial judgment began to resemble something else. And that realization changed everything. The incident itself, the moment this case was born, was not dramatic. There was no arrest, no raid, no single explosive event. Instead, it unfolded quietly. A legal memo landed on Trump's desk late one evening. Its conclusion was cautious, but clear. If proven intentional, repeated contextual omission may meet the threshold for defamation by implication. That sentence ignited a chain reaction. Trump, long critical of media institutions, saw not just bias but injury, reputational damage, political consequence. Personal grievance. Within weeks, private negotiations were attempted. Requests for clarification. Letters sent. Responses measured but firm. The BBC did not admit wrongdoing. They stood by editorial independence. And so the path forward narrowed to one place only: a courtroom. The investigation phase that followed was unlike traditional criminal cases. No police tape. No forensic labs. Instead, teams of lawyers, analysts, and media experts dissected years of footage. Thousands of hours were reviewed. Broadcast logs examined. Editorial emails subpoenaed. Timelines were reconstructed. Who approved which edit? When was the clip shortened? Why was that version selected repeatedly? Mistakes were made early. Trump's team initially underestimated jurisdictional complexity. The BBC underestimated the seriousness of intent allegations. Months passed. Then came the turning point. An internal editorial. Discussion never meant for public view surfaced during discovery. It did not say mislead. It did not say manipulate. But it contained a sentence that would echo through the courtroom. This cut communicates urgency better for international audiences. The court did not expect this. Suddenly, the question was no longer what was shown, but why that version was chosen. Psychological experts testified not about mental illness, but about institutional behavior. How repetition normalizes framing. How narrative reinforcement shapes public perception. How powerful figures respond when they believe identity itself is under attack. Trump's motive, prosecutors argued, was not money but correction of historical record. The BBC's motive, the defense argued, was clarity, not malice. Both could be true, or neither. That ambiguity sat at the heart of the case. When court proceedings began, the world watched. Charges were not criminal but civil, complex, and unprecedented in scale. The prosecution argued defamation by implication. Repeated editorial decisions created a misleading narrative harmful to reputation. The defense countered with constitutional protections. Editorial freedom. Public interest. Witnesses included media ethicists, former editors, legal scholars. One testimony stood out. A former BBC producer described the pressure of modern media cycles. "You are not told to distort," she said. "You are told to simplify. And sometimes, simplicity does violence to truth." The judge listened carefully. So did the jury. The verdict did not come easily. Days of deliberation. Legal standards weighed word by word. In the end, the court ruled narrowly. Not a sweeping condemnation. Not total dismissal. The ruling acknowledged editorial discretion, but criticized pattern contextual omission. Damages were limited not 10 billion, but significant enough to send a message. No celebration followed. Only quiet. The aftermath reshaped both parties. The BBC revised internal review processes, added context safeguards, transparency notes. Trump claimed vindication, but also restraint. Public reaction was divided. Some saw accountability, others saw threat. But one truth remained undeniable. Truth is not only what is said, it is also what is left unsaid. In the end, this was never just about Trump or the BBC. It was about power, perception, and responsibility. About how narratives are built and how easily they fracture trust. The courtroom doors closed, but the questions remain, and they will remain as long as words can shape history. Because justice does not erase damage. It only reminds us to be careful with the truth.